Hey champions, welcome back to another video. I hope you are well. Today I want to talk about why you need to be your own biggest critic. What I mean by critic is someone who criticizes you, someone who points out your flaws, your weaknesses, and tells you this isn't working well, you need to fix this. So what happens when you don't self-criticize? Because we have external criticism, and then I'm talking about internal criticism here. External criticism is when other people see you on the outside and they give their opinion on what doesn't work well for you. Internal criticism comes from when you recognize your own flaws and weaknesses that you want to work on. So when you don't self-criticize, there is a lot of stagnated growth. By not recognizing your flaws and weaknesses, there is no growth that's going to happen. And when there is no growth that's going to happen, you are just going to stay in the same position. You become complacent and give yourself permission to live a life that you're not truly internally happy with. Because the fact is, we don't like our flaws. No matter how serious or mild they are, we don't like our flaws. We don't like our weaknesses. We would much prefer to not have them or to improve on them. We live in the 2020s. The world is filled with people who are going to criticize you. The thing about this is listening to these critics most of the time isn't aligned with your values and the direction that you want to go. How do the critics know what your direction is? External criticism is a judgment made without the bigger picture in mind. Know what you think on a daily basis. You know where you plan to go. You already know what your weaknesses are, what your history is, what your strengths are. Listening to these critics can also be hurtful. It's hard to hear certain things when it doesn't come from yourself because it comes from this basic human need of wanting to be accepted and appreciated within human society. And when other people criticize you, it goes against that. Unless it is in your best interest, I would recommend you not to listen to these critics. Only if it is constructive and it actually is aligned with your life goals. So you cannot rely on other people to be your critics. What happens is when you place that importance of a role within someone else's hands, they misuse it. They don't know you truly, and they don't cater their criticism to your needs. I wanted to top my cohort overall. The amount of studying and hard work I would have to put in was quite a lot. I woke up early at 5 a.m. every morning in the school week to study. I would go to school, I would come home and study, and then I would relax later at night. But my friends in high school weren't the most studious. They didn't understand it and they used to criticize me. They used to say things like, you should be more fun. Why are you so boring? You should be more focused on dating girls. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that lifestyle I did have a little bit of and I enjoyed having that. But the criticism that I got for it, being called boring, having it implied to my face that I'm not a fun person because I study a lot instead of playing video games and going and kicking a football around and just Snapchatting girls. It's a choice that you have to make. Like I said, it's hard to face that criticism, but you can't rely on it. You can't give in to it and you can't listen to them. If I were to listen to them, for example, that wouldn't be aligned with my goals and my life direction because I wanted to top my cohort and set myself up for a good career afterwards going into university. Everyone wants to lead a certain life and be a certain way. So my question to you is, how do you want to lead your life? And once you ponder that question a bit, that brings me to the main point of this video. Why do you need self-criticism? Why do you need that internal criticism? When you have that internal criticism, it means it is intrinsic and it means that you genuinely want to be better. It doesn't mean you have to be successful in your career. It could be simply in your personality. You might want to be a more kind person or someone who listens well, who makes others feel comfortable, someone who is less angry, someone who is more patient. And when you pick up on flaws, for example, you get a bit hot-headed when you're playing a video game and you want to be a generally less angry person, you kind of criticize yourself and say, okay, look, I'm being way too agitated. I need to reel myself back and focus on being calm. Since others' criticism isn't aligned with who you are and your goals, you're actually less likely to commit to it, less inclined to do it. One of the last things about needing self-criticism is that it is persistent and it drives your growth. So I speak from experience. I'm a very self-critical person. I'm constantly trying to discipline myself to have a better personality, to have better qualities, to improve my performance. Since it's internal, it's constantly playing in my mind up here all day long. I'm seeing, I need to do this better, or I shouldn't be like this. I need to be like this instead, or I need to change my strategy with this. I don't like how this is going. Just constantly criticizing myself that this is bad. This needs to be improved. And I think that's a quality that only successful people have because self-criticism is much more powerful than external criticism. When people externally criticize you, like I said, you are less inclined to actually work towards that growth. Whereas when it's internal, it means you are unhappy with it. It means that you cannot bear living in that state, that you are like this. For example, I have been quite a lazy person for a lot of my life. And even sometimes I struggle with laziness. And what I do is when I waste away 2 hours, say I get stuck on Instagram Reels and I scroll for an hour. At the end of it, I just criticize myself so much because I'm like, why did you waste that hour? This is just not good enough. And I beat myself up about it. And people say, don't be too harsh on yourself. But I think in contrast, being harsh on yourself is what leads to that significant level of growth. Since I'm quite displeased with how I spend my time, I then really focus on trying to change that about myself. I've also been very sensitive in the past from a personality point of view. So my family would say something and I would take offense. I would get a bit defensive fairly quickly. And I didn't like that because I want to be grounded, authentic, who can lead others. And that is just not the quality of a leader, in my opinion. And I used to criticize myself, used to mentally say to myself, that's simply not good enough, Ravon. When it comes to self-criticism, I like to block it out into you have your personality and you have your performance. So let's talk about performance. There's this concept of something I like to call a performance ceiling, and I'm a high performer. For example, when I used to study a very high level of math a couple of years ago in high school, I wanted to get 100% of it. And that's almost impossible. The subject is so hard that nobody, or maybe one or two people in the entire state of New South Wales in Australia actually achieves that mark. But I wanted to reach that mark. So what I did is I knew I was capable of it. I knew I had the potential of getting full marks in that because I recognized my intelligence and I said, okay, I can do this. So the performance ceiling is almost like a little curve that goes like that. It eventually flattens out. There's like a maximum. Imagine you're standing in your room and there's a ceiling up there. It's just you keep performing until your limit, which is the ceiling. That's what the performance ceiling is. So the performance ceiling is just about pushing your limit and maximizing your performance. No one else knows what your limit is. No one else knows what your performance ceiling is. Sometimes we're performing not even halfway up that curve towards the performance ceiling, but sometimes we don't even perform to a level not even halfway up that curve towards the performance ceiling. We can push ourselves higher up that curve, and it only takes a little bit of effort to move up a little bit. Once you get to a certain point, you have to put a lot more effort to move up, and that's when you're reaching optimal performance. When it comes to self-criticism, say you're performing, maybe you're in the gym and you want to reach a certain weight by a certain day, or you're bulking and you want to weigh a certain amount by a certain time of the year, and for whatever reason you're not on track with your goals, that criticism needs to come in. Instead of saying, it's okay, I'm fairly close, you need to be really strict with yourself and say, this isn't good enough. I need to do better. I need to be stricter with myself. I need to be stricter with my diet. I need to be stricter with my gym schedule. That's the kind of attitude and mentality I'm talking about. The other component is the personality, and it's something which I want to put a bit more focus into. What is a personality shift? The personality shift is where most of my self-criticism happens. It is similar to what I talked about before, where there are certain things about your personality you are not happy with, certain flaws, weaknesses. Maybe you're very sensitive as a person. Maybe you're very angry. And I want to be a leader, for example. I want to be someone that my future kids can look at as a role model. I want to be a role model to the generation I'm in now, to the growing generation, in terms of what a good human being is, what a driven human being is, and what a respectful person looks like. Those are some things that very much matter to me. And to do that, there are some elements about myself that I have to keep working on. So the personality shift entails constantly recognizing what these traits, qualities, and features are that you dislike about yourself or just generally want to improve on, and rewiring your brain to actually rectify them. For example, I could be a little bit of an introvert and I might want to be an extrovert. Not that being an introvert is a bad thing, but just because I feel like I could benefit from being an extrovert, being able to talk to people more easily, foster new relationships, open up connections in careers, networking. And to end this video, I want to highlight the importance of balancing self-criticism or internal criticism with positive affirmation. If you're just constantly self-criticizing, which is a quality of successful people, but too much of it means that you become a generally negative person. And I think having a negative outlook on yourself is bad for self-esteem. It's bad for your day-to-day life. It's bad for your personal growth as a person. If you're constantly self-critical, you kind of blind yourself from all the positive things in the world, and you end up not really having an appreciation for who you already are and the good things about yourself. Maybe you're performing fairly well and you just want to do better, but if you constantly say this isn't good enough, you're not going to actually think you're performing at a decent level at all, which is fine from an improvement standpoint, because then you'll just work all that much harder to improve, but it's just bad for your mental well-being. And the reason why I'm saying positive affirmation is that self-esteem is really important to maintain. Self-esteem and confidence in who you are and what you're capable of and what you're already achieving actually influences your performance and your personality. If you have bad self-esteem, then you're just not going to reach the potential from a personality or performance point of view, because you're going to be doing it for the wrong reasons. And you're not going to be doing it with that intention, that pure intention of trying to be a more improved and better person. Affirmation gives you the validation that you are progressing towards your life direction and goals. That affirmation is almost like your checkpoint. It's that little voice in your head that says, keep going, you're doing well, you're on the right path, you're making the progress in your personal growth, you're making the progress in your performance, your personality shifts. You just have to keep at it. Whereas when you don't have that affirmation, it gets tiring and you become too self-critical to the point that you are negatively driven and you might start focusing on the wrong areas to actually improve. You need to be your own biggest critic because it is a high stakes role in your life. The criticism that you receive and you take on board constructively and use to improve different facets of your life really, really, really matters in terms of who you become and what you achieve. You develop that confidence and that leadership within yourself to take charge of your life and achieve the goals, perform the way you want to perform, and display the personality you want to have. The only thing that really should matter is your opinion of yourself. I hope this was an insightful video for you guys to watch. Self-criticism is a really big factor in my life, and I found it's been super beneficial. If you like this content, feel free to give a like and subscribe to me here. Take care, champions, and I will see you in the next video.